by the Skirball Cultural Center, and welcome to Debate Night in Los Angeles. I'm Alex Michelson, alongside Erica D. Smith, Oswaldo Borraes, and we've got Sheriff Alex Villanueva and Chief Robert Luna. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get to the rules. So we're going to go back and forth among rounds of questions. Each round, you're going to get a question for 1 minute. You're going to get a question for 1 minute. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond. In that time, we also will have opportunities potentially for follow-ups. You don't have to use all the time. If you don't use all the time, we have time for more questions. If you go over time, there's going to be a bell. And by the way, if you want to get involved in social media, you can use the hashtag Fox11Debate in social media as well. So let's get started. Chief Luna, we'll start with you, alphabetical order. We know elections are usually a referendum on the incumbent. Why do you think that voters should vote out Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and why are you the one to replace him?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight, thank the moderators and the organizers for this debate. I'm running for sheriff because I care, I want to make a difference, and at the end of the day, we absolutely need change. I grew up in East Los Angeles, unincorporated area, to immigrant parents, and I was inspired to be a police officer. That journey took me to the city of Long Beach, and I spent 36 years there serving my community, 7 years as a police chief, where I was very successful at reducing crime and increasing police accountability. And that's exactly what I'm going to do as the LA County Sheriff.
All right, Sheriff, to you. Why do you deserve 4 more years?
Well, this is a very basic situation. I campaigned 4 years ago on reform, rebuild, and restore, and I can report 4 years later we have accomplished exactly that. The challenges have changed. Homelessness continues to grow out of control. Violent crime from the George Floyd murder forward has just spiraled out of control. And now public corruption is rearing its ugly head. All these things require a major commitment on my part, on the part of the entire Sheriff's Department, to serve the community, and that is what our goal is right here. And I am not buying this idea that when the Board of Supervisors recruits 8 candidates to run against me, they did it for one reason only, because they want a puppet, and we have the person right here as that puppet. He volunteered for that. And 4 years ago, where were all these people that had such a big interest in running for sheriff? There was nobody. Myself and one other candidate. There's a reason why. This is about the independence of the Sheriff's Department and checks and balances against the unlimited power of the Board of Supervisors. That's what's at stake.
What do you say to the charge that you're just a puppet for the Board of Supervisors and you're going to do what the establishment wants?
I'd like to start off with saying 70% of the people in the primary voted against Alex Villanueva. There were 7 candidates, and by the way, they've all endorsed me for the sheriff's race. And here's something that the sheriff needs to learn. When you're working with people, that doesn't mean you're a puppet. That means you're working with people to collaborate at the end of the day to serve our community, the members of our county, in the best way possible. When you are consistently putting down the people who manage your budget, you're not serving our residents to the best of your ability.
Well, on that point that the Board of Supervisors controls the purse strings, and if you're alienating them, that actually hurts the Sheriff's Department. What do you say to that?
Actually, if you're not fighting against the defunding effort of the Board of Supervisors, you're not serving the community. You're actually acquiescing to the defunding scheme. And I am dead set against that. Because we have major challenges, you cannot fight crime without crime fighters. And I have an opponent, in fact, all of them combined had over 100 years as registered Republicans, and I'm the only lifelong Democrat still standing right here today, and that is the difference between the two of us right there. However, I'm committed to working with both sides of the aisle moving forward.
Yeah, and that issue of how to work with people seems really central to this race. Erica Smith has more on that.
Thanks, Alex. Chief, Sheriff, I'd like to start with you actually to piggyback on what you just said. You know, throughout your term, you've battled with the Inspector General, the Board of Supervisors, the Civilian Oversight Commission. Is there value in working with people you disagree with in government?
There's always value in doing that. I've done 103 town halls to date. I've met people across the county. Most agree with me, some disagree with me, some of them very vocally, to the point I've gotten death threats, you know, because of the actions I've done. But if people are doing the right thing for the right reasons, I will work shoulder to shoulder with them. You look at the collaboration with Catherine Barger in the high desert with the marijuana eradication. I appreciated her efforts, and we're working together. However, when the efforts of the board are towards basically breaking up government unions, contracting out the official business of government to the private nonprofit sector where there's no accountability, there's no transparency, there's no results, I'm going to object to that because I need the resources. I need to have a fully staffed department. So when they impose a hiring freeze on the department, what am I going to do? Greet it with open arms? Of course I'm going to object to that. But the question is, we can disagree, and I agree with Alex with you. We have to disagree civilly, but we have to stake our positions and we have to defend them. If you're not willing to defend it, why are you here?
Thanks. Chief, how would you do things differently? How would you work with others in government if you're elected?
The first thing I would do as sheriff is I would stop this us versus them culture and mentality. When you have a person who stands up in front of the cameras and in front of all the residents in Los Angeles County and is consistently putting down not only the Board of Supervisors, but other elected officials that because he doesn't agree, and you said it earlier, part of governing is not agreeing with people, but it's the way you handle it. And by the way, if I didn't mention this earlier, yes, I do have the endorsement of all 5 of our LA County supervisors. Why? Because they have seen the way I work with people. And I want to make a distinction. I work with people. I don't work for people. That's the contrast between myself and my opponent to my left.
Sheriff, would you say to that,
Well, for one, I'd say his record in Long Beach belies that. He definitely works for example, when Long Beach was burning down in the middle of the riots, where was my opponent? He acquiesced to what the mayor and the political establishment of Long Beach said, which is don't do anything. Don't offend the looters. It's just property damage. And of course, we've spoken directly to the people impacted by it, and they have a wildly different opinion of that. So there's a point in time when you have to step up to the plate and do the right thing. It's just not going to happen with this man.
Chief, your response?
It's embarrassing for the man in charge of LA County Sheriff to be passing on bad information, but that's who he is. Everything he just said was false. My mayor never ordered me to pull back from looters. As a matter of fact, he's the sheriff of LA County. If he would have been doing his job that day and summoning more mutual aid for the entire area, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and Long Beach wouldn't have suffered the way we did. He was out saying he was leading from the front, chasing people around. Where he should have been is trying to summon more law enforcement help from all over the state and county, including the National Guard.
We're going to move on.
All right. Now to the #1 thing that people emailed us about, which is the issue of homelessness. Oswaldo has more on that.
Thank you, Alex. And I would like to start with you, Chief Luna. What do you see as the department's role in addressing street encampments and other visible homelessness in not only the county, but in many areas that affect around?
With homelessness, the status quo is absolutely not working. There are way too many people that are mentally ill and addicted who don't have housing, who are on our streets, and we need to do a better job. In regards to policing or the sheriff's department, our primary job is to support our partners. We have to, in Long Beach as a police chief, I supported our health department, and before COVID hit, our actual homeless numbers were starting to drop. Obviously, COVID hit, it started going the other way. We cannot have a police leader who decides at the last minute to get in front of a TV camera and say, look at the credit I'm taking credit for cleaning up a specific block or area and not give credit to all the government entities and the non-government entities who are working their butts off to clean the streets, whether it was Venice, the VA hospital, or Alvera Street, or some of these other locations around the county of Los Angeles.
Well, speaking of that, Mr. Villanueva, a lot of Venice residents say homeless encampments precisely were cleared off the boardwalk, and they ended up moving to different locations around the Venice area in front of their homes in some cases. What do you say to critics that they say that those cleanups were basically a situation where you were not actually solving the problem by just moving it someplace else?
Well, actually, there's plenty of people that say we did improve on the Venice boardwalk itself. The same thing with Olvera Street. Well, my opponent didn't answer the question, what is the proper role of law enforcement? I'll tell you, the proper role of law enforcement is to regulate public space, actually work in a collaborative environment, which we're doing with our homeless outreach service team. We work with the LA Homeless Service Authority, and we've worked at the county level, at the city level, and it works. Sometimes with, for example, Councilman Kevin De Leon, we worked together. We got Olvera Street cleaned up pretty quickly. On Venice Boardwalk with Councilman Mike Bonin, it dragged on quite a bit. It didn't need to be, because he was resistive to actually cleaning up the boardwalk for whatever his motives are. But at the end of the day, let me borrow his famous phrase, we need to make sure we regulate public space, we get people the shelter, the help they need, and return that space to the community. That is the role of law enforcement, to make sure it happens. Under his plan, he has no plan. He just said it. Couldn't say a single thing that the law enforcement is supposed to do.
So, Chief Luna, would you like to follow up with that? Do you have a plan?
Yes. We have to have a holistic approach to work with our partners, and it doesn't matter who gets credit. The sheriff should not have been out in Venice taking credit for all that work. Although the members of the Sheriff's Department did do some good work out there, he should have been thanking the men and women of the St. Joseph Center who actually did all the pre-work out there. But law enforcement, you have to have a part in it. You have to be a good partner. You have to collaborate and get along with people. And here's the difference. Again, if somebody doesn't agree with you, you have to be able to find a middle ground to get the job done.
Thank you very much. To you, yeah, you get a response there.
I'm still waiting for the plan. Where is it? You know, holistically throwing all these buzzwords does not get us anywhere, does not get a single person into shelter. We have to literally get the Board of Supervisors and the mayor, primarily the board, to build up capacity, shelter capacity and treatment for those who suffer mental illness, substance abuse. We got to build it up tenfold from what we have today. That has to be priority number one. And then we have to work with all of the entities that work together with the Homeless Outreach Service team to get them into shelter, reclaim our public space.
On to another question now. The Sheriff's Department has been in the news a lot over the last week, a lot of developing news, including today on that front. Frank Stoltz from KPCC has a question about that.
Thanks, Alex. This is to you, Sheriff. The State Attorney General has just taken over a criminal investigation your department was conducting into two people you have clashed with publicly, County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl and a member of the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission. Wouldn't it have been more appropriate and more ethical if you had gone to an outside agency in the first place, given both these people either have budgetary or oversight responsibility over your department?
Very good question. The answer is we've already done that. This investigation started in September of 2019, and we consulted with the Attorney General. And that is my practice in every investigation that may be complicated or politically sensitive. For those that really don't want to be transparent about what their business is, like the Board of Supervisors, we approach the Attorney General, we approach the FBI, we make them aware of our concerns. And specifically the Attorney General in February, we told them, hey, this is everything that's going on. This is a search warrant we executed back in 2021, February of 2021. 18 months later, the board has been fighting tooth and nail to prevent the evidence seized in search warrants from being revealed. And now they're fighting all over again with a new batch of court motions to fight evidence being revealed. Why is this? That is the important question, not what you perceive as a conflict of interest, because look it up in the penal code or the government code, it does not exist. The authority of the sheriff is to investigate crime, period.
Chief Luna, would you handle this investigation differently?
Yes, 100%. I strongly agree that the Attorney General stripped the sheriff of this investigation because the sheriff had no business investigating this from the very beginning. You cannot investigate your political opponents or enemies. You've heard him talking for the last several minutes. Every time he brings up the Board of Supervisors, there's anger in his voice. He hates them. He doesn't like them. He doesn't get along with them. You should not be investigating this. This is why the public trust has been eroded, specifically with this incident. You cannot do this. I'm elected sheriff. I'm going to handle it completely different.
Sheriff, you say you recused yourself from the Kuehl investigation. You handed it over to your undersheriff, who, of course, reports to you. Yet you were in the media talking about this search warrant last week. How can you read that as a recusal? How can this not be viewed as political bullying and intimidation of the supervisor, who, again, has budgetary control over your department?
Well, first, let's address what Mr. Luna just said. One, he's not going to touch public corruption. He won't touch it with a 10-foot pole because his job as puppet is to look the other way. When it comes to commenting on last week's search warrant, Sheila Kuehl, the supervisor, made the astonishing admission that she was alerted illegally by the Inspector General and County Council. That is the scandal that the media here, for some reason, doesn't really want to talk about. It's all focused on, let's call me the whistleblower, the one who's actually in charge of the department. Where is the concern there? That's the question.
Chief Luna, do you want to respond to his accusation that you will not investigate public corruption?
Again, that's absolutely false. We have corruption. I am going to immediately get on the phone with one of our partners that I have an amazing relationship with, whether it's state DOJ, the FBI, or somebody else. So just think of it this way. If there is evidence of misdoing or some crime, what jury is going to believe the man who consistently gets out in front of a camera and demeans the 5 Board of Supervisors? You got to think of it that way. There's got to be a different way of doing this.
All right, now we're going to ask a question that may take the temperature down a bit, maybe. This LA Times reader, Teresa Gaines, asked a question about trust, which is a theme that both of you have brought up. And my question is, you both have said that integrity is key for law enforcement. I'll start with you, Chief Luna. Can you tell us about what individual in your life most shaped your worldview about ethics and how?
There's a whole list of people, but I'd start off with my mother. My mother was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. She had a 3rd grade education. Although she was born in Modesto, California, she was born to a migrant family from Michoacan, Mexico. And she taught me about character, work ethic, and always 100% being honest. And it carried on from there. In my work life at the Long Beach Police Department, I met some of the most incredible human beings that work there that were absolutely 100% about integrity. Integrity is the cornerstone of law enforcement. Our law enforcement code of ethics, our oath that we took, it is the most important thing that we teach our new recruits when they come into the work environment under law enforcement, and that's what we eventually will regain as public trust as we move forward.
Sheriff, same question to you. What individual most shaped your worldview about ethics?
Well, I can say, and I'll agree with him, at the beginning was my mother, but in my adult life, it's my wife, Vivian. She was literally born and raised in East LA. She went to 4th Street Elementary. She went to Griffith Junior High. She went to Garfield High School and then Cal State LA. That's what's called born and raised in East LA really means. So if you want to talk about integrity, you might want to clarify exactly where you were raised and what schools you went to. This is what integrity is all about. When you're doing the right thing when no one is looking. And now there's a lot of people looking. But when it came to speaking truth to power, that's integrity. I told Lee Baca and Paul Tanaka when I was a lonely sergeant with no voice that they were wrong. They were doing things that were illegal, unethical. It was a lead to the downfall of the organization. I was proved right, but it cost me a career for many, many years because I spoke truth to power. Now as a sheriff, I'm speaking the truth to power again. It's like Groundhog Day. The political establishment is trying to, oh my God, what is he doing now?
Are you saying that he doesn't have integrity?
He needs to clarify where's he raised.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was born in East Los Angeles. My dad was migrated here, I said earlier, from Sinaloa, Mexico. My mother, I was the oldest of 3 kids. I went to Rowan Elementary. I went to Our Lady of Lourdes. And then my parents were able to finally afford a house, and we moved away. I went to middle school and high school in Santa Fe Springs, which I'm very, very proud of.
And why is that such an issue?
Because he claimed that in East LA he saw deputies at work and he knew a good cop from a bad cop, and I really have doubt when you're that young that you can understand the difference of the two. Those are things you get when you get a little bit older in life.
All right, we're going to real quickly.
When I was 5 and 6 years old, growing up in East LA, and I say growing up because I was born there, during the Chicano moratorium and the anti-Vietnam protest, as a 5 and 6 year old, when you see deputies using force on people with batons. I don't know about any of you in the crowd. I never forgot that. Again, we have the sheriff of LA County who's supposed to talk about deputy-involved shootings, natural disasters, and all these critical incidences, and he's making up information right here in front of all of you.
So I'm just going to note that this was the question that was supposed to bring the temperature down. So there we go. This next one may bring the temperature up. Erica, to you.
Yeah, no attempt here to bring it down. So our debate partners at the LA Urban League have described the Sheriff's Department's relationship with the Black community as, quote, less than stellar. More recently, Sheriff, you've made some troubling comments to the LA Times about Black people, including that we are inherently prone to criminality. How should Black voters interpret those comments?
Well, actually, I think the better question is, how does people interpret the Wren family tree? This was posted in Long Beach Police Department's homicide unit, and it's a tree full of individuals who were convicted, I guess, of murder, and they're all white faces, and the last face at the bottom hanging on a noose is a Black man. Here's a photo of a radio car, looks like a slick car, with a banana peel on it. There's images of Mr. Popo circulated throughout the department, openly using the N-word. And when people came to Mr. Luna as a supervisor to complain about it, they're the one that faced the retaliation. They were the one that had to move out, or some of them were forced to retire, resigned, and face discipline. So they became the subject of the investigation, kind of like right now when I'm pointing out and the public corruption unit does their job, all of a sudden the script is flipped. So actually, our department is a model of inclusiveness.
Sheriff, you want to respond to that? Or Chief, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. As you just witnessed, when asked tough questions, it's somebody else's fault. I'm the victim, blame it on somebody else. That family tree that he's talking about, and this is documented in the Long Beach Police Department. I was a police sergeant at that time working for a deputy chief of investigations. A very good detective brought it to my attention, and immediately I turned it over to my deputy chief, and we turned it into an administrative investigation. So again, I have a guy sitting here to my left making up stuff, and that's scary when we're talking about the sheriff of Los Angeles County.
Sheriff, I'll let you respond to that, but you didn't actually answer the original question. So I'd like you to answer that as well as respond.
And what was the original question?
How should Black voters respond to some of the comments you've made recently?
Black voters need to respond because our department is a model of inclusiveness. As sheriff, my first month in office, I promoted African-American female to the rank of division chief. I have 4 of the 12 are African-American. I have 698 sworn employees who are African-American. All of our policies are inclusive that allow everyone to compete on a level playing field. That is inclusive. Well, by the way, you need to get your facts a little better. Maybe it's time. But the gentleman right there,
Thank you.
Mark McGuire, can explain
Sheriff.
exactly what happened.
All right.
All right, Chief, you have one response to that. How would you address that relationship between the community and the department if elected?
That it's absolutely critical. We have a very negative history in law enforcement and our Black community that goes back decades. I think it's evolved, it's gotten better, but we have a long ways to go. And there's a lot of mistrust. For me, being elected as your sheriff, I'm going to work my tail off to do everything I can to work with all communities, specifically our Black community, to make our relationship better and unique. I want to point something out. In one of the last 6 lawsuits that this sheriff has been involved in, there was a chief female.
We're going to have to cut you off. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. We'll get to that hopefully later. Oswaldo, public safety.
Indeed, and we have a question from a viewer named Laura Vidales, and she says, as a lifelong resident, I can honestly say Los Angeles currently feels like a very unsafe place to live. Why is Laura safer with you as a sheriff than your opponent? Let's start off with you, Sheriff Villanueva.
En primer lugar, es un privilegio poder responder esta pregunta.
Gracias.
Para los televidentes de Univision. La razón por que estamos viendo tanta violencia es por 2 razones principales. Hay muchos que están empujando la ola de crimen que estamos viendo en este momento, pero tenemos un fiscal de distrito que se reniega a hacer su trabajo, de hacer todos los casos que llevamos a su oficina, no lo está poniendo frente a las tribunas, que las personas sean acontables por lo que están haciendo. Y en la segunda, la Junta de Supervisores quitándole los fondos a nuestras comunidades, y eso quiere decir que los alguaciles que trabajando en las calles, hay muchos menos. Estamos faltando 30% de todos los alguaciles en todas las estaciones de sheriff a través del condado. Con menos policías, más pillos, como dicen. Y esa es la razón que tenemos eso.
For the white boy here, what just happened?
Well, why don't we have Chief Luna translate?
What did he say?
Chief Luna, would you like to help us with that? Yeah, respond, and if you want a translator.
I'll respond to it.
Sure.
Crime is the #1 challenge or priority for anybody that's an executive in law enforcement, whether it's a sheriff's department or any police department. I feel the trajectory of crime in Los Angeles County, like it is in most major cities, is going up. What we need is a sheriff who takes accountability and gives you a plan for what they're doing to address crime. You cannot have a 77% increase in homicides the way the sheriff's department does and has a sheriff that blames the board of supervisors, that blames a district attorney, that blames everybody else. You need a plan, because at the end of the day, I need to keep you and your family safe. So in Long Beach, I reduced violent crime by 6.5% and property crime by 10%. At the same time that my council had reduced my staffing, and I was working for the same DA that everybody else was in LA County. Stop the excuses. Let's get the job done.
Thank you. Sheriff, do you want to follow up on anything on this?
Actually, notice I don't think he quite finished the question about Mr. Mark McGuire over there. He told you quite a bit about action he took, but what he didn't tell you is that he asked him to please address it in confidence. And you threw him under the bus the very next day. He had to report to the chief. And that pretty much plateaued his career right there. And that is not acceptable. Not acceptable on the sheriff's department. And that's actually a violation of policy.
Okay, but speaking of what the question was, do you want to follow up to anything that he said?
I think we need to work together. Of course we need to work together, but we need to have a district attorney that does his job. 13,677 cases that were not prosecuted by George Gascon in 2021, and he enthusiastically embraces that lack of effort from Gascon.
And Oswaldo, can you give us a 15-second translation of his original answer for people that may not have
Well, why don't we have the sheriff do it for us?
Pretty much said that, when you have crime rising, what can we do about it, and why does the caller is concerned? She has a right to be concerned. You have a district attorney that was not prosecuting crime. His special orders are directly leaving dangerous people on the street. That revolving door is prejudicing everyone. And on top of that, the defunding effort from the Board of Supervisors means I have less personnel.
Okay.
A lot, like 2,300 less personnel.
All right, we're getting some extra time in there for you. We're going to now move to a question about transportation. The LA Sheriff's Department helps to patrol Metro along with the LAPD and the Long Beach Police Department, which of course Robert Luna used to oversee. We have a question from one of our partners from Loyola Marymount University. This is a student named Chloe Barcenas, and she's a sophomore at LMU. And she joins us now. Chloe.
After my fellow students and I graduate, we want to ride public transportation to our future jobs. Yet we are concerned it's not safe. What is your plan to resolve this issue?
Sheriff, to you first.
Oh, this is a pretty easy one. Over the summer, we launched the Operation Safe Travel. We flooded the train system with as many of our personnel we could fiscally assign to it, and they were able to reduce violent crime by 85%. Huge reduction in crime when we were present. The Metro Board right now wants to replace law enforcement, sworn law enforcement, with unarmed ambassadors, and they want to increase outreach to the homeless and decrease the presence of law enforcement. I'm quoting the chair of the MTA board. That is why you see the disaster you have today. 5,700 homeless were camped out on the trains and on the platforms. That is unacceptable. We had a man set on fire on the Gold Line. He was set on fire twice by a transient. That is the conditions right now. In fact, I had the chance to ride the trains with Violeta, a lovely young lady who goes to school in Long Beach, and she's going traversing the entire length of it. And what she told me about is appalling, and we do have a plan, and it involves actually enforcing the rule of law.
Chief Luna, that question about transportation safety.
We have an obligation to make sure that our trains and buses are safe. And it takes a collaborative effort, and right now there are 3 agencies doing it. You have the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, you have the Los Angeles Police Department, you have the Long Beach Police Department. And the plan is working out pretty good. Not too long ago, the sheriff got up and made a threat and said, if you don't give it all back to me, I'm going to walk away from this. And again, it's that us versus them mentality. That's not the way we keep people safe. We continuously have to work, just like we do with all crime, is look at data. You have to be data driven. Where is it happening? How are we addressing it? And then hold your people accountable to make sure that safety is going up. Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep it safe, people aren't going to write it. But they depend on us. And I'm not just saying law enforcement. I think the sheriff was talking about alternative responses. That is something we have to look towards to do enforcement or safety in a different manner, looking at the future.
Sheriff, what do you make of Chief Luna's record on public safety helping to oversee Metro?
Well, I can tell you this. Part of the problem that we've seen explode since 2017 when the Sheriff's Department had the entire contract was the MTA board created a Metro court where they were going to address quality of life issue, which are lower level misdemeanor crimes. And they were going to be enforced by security, not by law enforcement. So they essentially handcuffed law enforcement, and then the homeless population on the train just exploded overnight. And that is a crisis we're seeing today, and that has to end. We have to revert back to a law enforcement model and hold people accountable.
Last word to you.
Accountability is very important, but let's look at different methods of getting there. We have issues with mental health. We have issue with the unhoused and the addicted. The police aren't going to solve all those problems. We have to be at the table. We have to be part of the solution, but let's incorporate other people so we can at least look at this long term and do something that's sustainable. We can't afford what the sheriff is suggesting.
If you are just joining us, the time is now 6:30. You are watching the Sheriff's Debate for Debate Night in Los Angeles. I'm Alex Michelson. Our next question goes to Erica D. Smith of the LA Times.
Thank you, Alex. As you mentioned earlier, we did poll viewers and readers ahead of this debate to try to get questions. One of the things that came up quite a bit was deputy gangs. And I wanted to ask a question about that. Chief Luna, how big do you think of an issue this is in the department right now?
It's a big issue. As I've been campaigning across this county, listening to the residents of every corner, deputy gangs are one of the top 3 questions that I get. And here's my plan. Number 1, you have to admit that there's a problem if you're going to fix it. Number 2, you make sure people on the inside and outside know it's absolutely unacceptable. You got to make sure there's a policy. And if you write a policy and you don't do training or you don't hold anybody accountable, the training isn't, or the policy isn't worth the paper it's written on. At the same time, we need federal and state intervention. And noble concept here, cooperate with oversight. If you get subpoenaed, you go to wherever you're subpoenaed. We have to, this goes back to the first question you asked about public trust. We have to show the public that they can trust us, and right now, they do not. There is a mental health care component to this. In my late years as chief of police in Long Beach, mental health care became more of a priority. Thank you.
Sheriff, to you, what do you say to that? Are you doing enough to resolve this issue?
Well, I'm doing what no other sheriff has ever done in history. My very first day on the job, I removed the leadership team of East LA Station where the Kennedy Hall incident occurred. I followed it up with a criminal investigation, administrative investigation. I fired 4 deputies for misconduct. I suspended without pay 22. I transferred 36. I created a policy and implemented the policy in February of 2020. From there, I sponsored legislation, Assembly Bill 958. So our department policy is now the model of which state law is modeled after. That is effective. That is telegraph. And I had every single employee see a video where I communicated exactly what he's saying, by the way. And then they had to sign an attestation form, which goes on their permanent record that they understand the policy and they're being held accountable to it. That is progress, and that is actually addressing the situation. But deputy gangs has become a political buzzword, and it's just like unicorns. Everybody knows what a unicorn looks like, but I challenge you, name one. Name a single deputy gang member, and I've yet to hear that.
Would you respond to that?
You just heard He doesn't acknowledge they exist. Can't fix a problem you don't know exists. His own chief of staff that he handpicked has a Grim Reaper tattoo. Ask him what a Grim Reaper is. He has stopped his IA investigators from investigating an incident involving the banditos at Kennedy Hall. Is that a person who takes deputy gang serious? I don't think so.
Sheriff.
Well, for one thing, he's going to have to explain what the Northtown Rangers are. Ring a bell, Mr. Luna?
Oh, absolutely.
And what his involvement in that group is. And I'll tell you this, we took all the action we could legally, and we cannot go beyond that because then we're violating the rights of our employees. So if someone believes there's a gang member, I've asked this of the OIG, I've asked this of the COC, the board, everyone who claims, oh my God, the sky is falling, deputy gangs are running up, name a single one. If you can't name one, well, then you're not going to do anything. Who are you kidding?
You want to respond to what he said about basically accusing you of being in a gang? Is that what you're accusing him of?
I don't know. Again, he's talking. I don't know where he's getting it from. Northtown Rangers was a group that was in the Long Beach Police Department at North Division years ago that, by the way, we eradicated.
Sheriff, just to be clear, were you accusing him of being in a gang?
Well, I'm talking actual peace officers, cops from Long Beach, current and retired, and they say that was a problem and is still an issue with Long Beach. They've never addressed the issue of white supremacy and mistreatment of African Americans and minorities in general. And you should be very familiar with that because that keeps rearing its ugly head.
All right, now we want to go back to Frank Stoltz from KPCC for his question. Frank.
Let's talk a little bit about, thank you, Alex, criminal justice reform. LA County is spending tens of millions of dollars on diverting people from jail into mental health treatment and other social services in what's called a Care First, Jails Last plan. Sheriff Villanueva, you have called this an unrealistic, woke approach to public safety. Why do you say that?
Well, it's pretty simple because when the department was defunded, $145 million one year, $16 million the next year, 1,281 positions removed. Where do you think that budget went? It went to the Care First Jails Lack. It went to Justice Care and Opportunities Department. Big fancy names are willing and titles, but when you come to what exactly, what service are you delivering and who's getting it and who's being held accountable if the service works or not, total silence. There is zero accountability, zero transparency. We're just dumping the money down a rabbit hole and nothing is happening while I still need to deal with the conditions of confinement of my inmates in the county jail who are suffering for lack of resources and lack of staffing. Those are real problems. I need to get them on their feet and in better shape than when they entered in the jail system. But I'm depriving them of programming because I lack the funding, the resources, and the staffing. And this is something that Judge Dean Ferguson is now addressing with the TRO that was just issued.
Chief Luna, do you support Care First, Jails Last?
We have to look at different alternatives because I keep on repeating this, but the status quo is not working. We have, unfortunately, a reputation for having the worst jails in the country. As a matter of fact, recently a federal monitor said there had been no progress. Progress slowed to a halt under this current administration with the 2 consent decrees that currently exist at the LA County Jail. We need good management. We need better leadership. We need to turn the page on history and finally look at jails in a completely different way with subject matter experts outside of law enforcement to deal with all the mentally ill that are in jail. We need to get them better health care, mental health care. We need to deal with the overcrowding, and we need to hold employees accountable. That's not what I hear here. We have to work very hard and roll up our sleeves and finally get on track with these 2 consent decrees.
Sheriff, the chief says it's a management problem, not a money problem.
Well, actually, maybe he needs to explain that to the federal judge, Dean Ferguson, who says the exact opposite. It is definitely a funding issue, and now the attention is being turned towards the Board of Supervisors because they're the one that have been depriving our custody operations of the necessary funding so we can have a constitutional level of care. That is our mission. During the pandemic, we got an award for innovation from the American Jail Association for our approach to the COVID that actually saved lots of lives, hundreds of lives, because of the efforts we did, because we actually do care.
Do you want to respond to that, Chief?
If we're saving lives, congratulations.
Okay. Now our next question comes from one of our partners. That's the California Contract Cities Association. They're deeply concerned about lawsuits related to alleged misconduct by deputies. Over the last 5 years, we have seen tens of millions of dollars taxpayers have had to pay out every year due to lawsuits against the Sheriff's Department. About $35 million alone in the Kobe Bryant case that we just saw. As Sheriff, we'll start with you, Chief Luna. What policies will you implement to mitigate the risks of some of these massive lawsuits that end up costing every one of us taxpayers?
First of all, you have to look in the mirror and hold yourself accountable. You have to look at what you are doing, what your department is doing, and make sure you start taking corrections from A to Z. You look at every lawsuit that came in, you have county counsel debrief all the juries and find out what in our policy, what in our training, or what in our accountability do we have to look at to change the trajectory that we're on. And then communicating this with our customers that work in every contract city. Because you're right, the Kobe Bryant thing, and if you look at the lawsuits just in this last year, I counted at least 6 against Alex Villanueva by members of his close command staff that are accusing him of everything from discrimination to cover-ups to just some god-awful allegations of corruption. We've got to stop this.
He says you're costing taxpayers money. What do you say?
Well, first, he knows darn well that any lawsuit that works its way through the court system takes years. So most of the lawsuits we're paying out today were incidents that happened under my predecessor, even before my predecessor. But most important, when it comes to liability, there's a man named Galen Ball who received 50 stitches across his head to put his head back together after an encounter involving Mr. Luna. And all the documents were shredded when, in anticipation of SB 14-1, then Chief Luna decided, let's get rid of all the documentation so no trial attorney has anything to discover. That's liability. Another liability, when you panic and shoot through a door and you shoot someone on the other side of the door and they end up dying, his name was Faustino Rodriguez. He was a Breonna Taylor of the 1990s. Yes, and this is a tragedy. Again, Mr. Luna, he needs to explain his role in that one. In that, if I look at, and I've read through all the evidence, I've read from people involved in the investigation, it smacks of a cover-up, and that drives liability. Thank God it didn't happen today.
Big allegations there.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. In my history, I was involved in one officer-involved shooting. He just said I killed somebody. He needs to look at the reports again. I'm sitting up here shocked that the sheriff of LA County is saying this publicly, and his information is flawed. Because in that incident, I shot my partner. I was on a SWAT team. We were serving a search warrant. My partner, unfortunately, shot and killed the suspect. I don't know. He's putting out false information to all of you, and it's really scary that a guy who's calling himself the sheriff of LA County continuously is putting out just misinformation.
He says basically you're lying or you got your facts wrong.
Well, I can read. He was involved in the incident. Someone died tragically. And who on earth does a raid on a search warrant on a house where they know there are guns, they know it's fortified, they know there are minor children? Hey, let's ram our way through the front door at 7:40 at night when everyone's watching TV. What a great plan that was. And you participated in that plan. That does not happen in our department. Not even in 1992, our department, they would do such a reckless action.
Oswaldo, next question to you.
Well, leaves a lot of questions there, obviously, but let's change it a little bit. Should the county experiment with having unarmed personnel instead of sheriff's deputies responding to car, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic violations? Start off with you, sir.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. Should the county experiment with having unarmed personnel instead of sheriff's deputies responding to car, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic violations?
I think we need to look at every alternative. Police work has evolved. It's changed. We need to do an analysis, and again, looking at data to figure out what kind of calls are we responding to, what kind of proactive work are we doing, what does our community expect from us, what are we getting at the end of the day out of this? So to answer the question, it sounds like you're asking me, do I believe in other alternative responses to responding to these kind of incidents? And I 100% do. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and over and fail. Not to say that we're always failing, but to your earlier question about liability, if we start looking at this, that's another way to reduce liability. It's just policing in the 21st century means that you're being more strategic and just smarter on the way we approach problems. So yes, I fully support it.
Sheriff?
We have community service officers at most of our patrol stations, and they take reports for burglaries, for thefts, and things like that. But when it comes to actually traffic enforcement, that belongs to a sworn peace officer and actually conforms to state vehicle code. You can't assign someone who is not sworn to pull someone over in effective detention. And that's something Mr. Luna should be aware of. And when it comes to exploring other things that we can do, by all means, we have co-response models. A mental evaluation team pairs up deputies with licensed clinicians, and they work together in team. They're not in uniform. They do an incredible job of de-escalating cases, and no one goes to jail. They get people the proper care. It might be a 72-hour psychiatric hold or in a facility. That's how a co-response model works. It's effective, and it takes away from some of the workload of the deputies working patrol that can't sit on a body waiting for a bed in a psychiatric facility. So there are things that we can improve on that. But when you're at 0.9 deputies per 1,000 residents,
Thank you.
It's tough to do that.
You had a rebuttal there?
I think the men and women of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department do a fantastic job. But I'm talking to you as a person who, as a 13-year-old, was riding a bicycle and got tossed face first into the hood of a sheriff's car when I was in middle school in Santa Fe Springs when the sheriffs had that contract there. I've seen it from the other side. It doesn't feel good. We've got to look at other ways of doing our work.
Erica, to you, a question about George Gascon.
I do. So this, I'm going to put it to both of you. So, Sheriff, you helped lead the effort to recall District Attorney Gascon. Obviously, that failed to make it onto the ballot. So at this point, it looks like he's going to be district attorney in LA for the next couple of years. If I'm a victim of a crime, don't I want the sheriff and the DA to work together?
Ideally, yes. In fact, his predecessor, Jackie Lacey, and I had a very good working relationship. We met each other every roughly 90 days. I'd visit her, she'd visit me. We'd address issues of concern. But when you're district attorney and your first day in office, you come down like Moses in the mountains with the tablets and say, this is my special orders, everyone shall follow. That is not a collaborative model. That is not working with all your criminal justice partners to see what areas of the criminal justice system can be reformed. And there are areas that we can definitely do a lot of reform, but it has to be together. It has to be buy-in from all the stakeholders. That never happened. So now, like I said, 13,677 cases in 2021 tells me he is the wrong person for the job because he is not a district attorney. He is a second public defender, and that is jeopardizing the safety of every single man and woman here in Los Angeles County, and I'm holding accountable to that. If he changes course and said, hey, you know what, okay, I had a wrong approach, let's turn this around, I'd be more than happy to work with him, but I'm just not hearing that from his office.
Chief, how would you work with the DA if elected, or how important is it?
The relationship between the sheriff and the DA is critical. And it's not about the fact whether I like the man or not. If he got voted into office by a significant percentage, and if I get voted into office, it is my responsibility and obligation because the people of the county of the people of the county of Los Angeles voted for both of us and expect us to work together. I don't agree with all of George Gascon's policies, but my obligation is to work with him so that I can do the best we can do to make sure cases are filed and we're not presenting to our employees again, this us versus them mentality of, you know what, you don't have to respond to calls, you don't have to investigate crimes because the DA is not going to file them. That is unethical, it is immoral, and we cannot have that attitude towards our community in LA County.
Sheriff, do you have a response to that? And also, you know, you said that what you just said, but, you know, Gascon is going to be our DA for the next couple of years. So do you plan on not cooperating with him, even if he doesn't change his policies?
All of our investigators, they file cases when they can with him. If they have the opportunity to go federally and go around him, like in the case of the tragic murder of LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos, we took it federally. Same thing with the Ed Buck situation. We took that federally. The cases where we had now fentanyl poisoning, we're taking those federally because case law is not very solid in this regard. And then the district attorney, I have no confidence in him doing his job. But the point is, he has to actually file cases. If he's not filing cases, we can't play pretend that we're going to work together and have this wonderful relationship. He's not doing his job.
Thank you. Chief, do you have a response to that?
We have an obligation to work with people even we don't like. I don't know if I walk into your office, any of you sitting in the audience or watching this on TV, and you just heard me for a week call you names, demean you, say you're going to walk down with 2 tablets from a mountain. I don't think you're going to be very welcoming to me and want to work with me. This nonsense has got to stop. We've got to start acting like adults and working with people for the benefit of the residents of this county.
All right, we're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit. Maybe we'll do a minute each on this question without the rebuttals. Concealed carry is an issue that a lot of people are concerned about. The Supreme Court changed the rules, made it easier for the Sheriff's Department to have more latitude in terms of who gets concealed carry permits. What should be the policy for concealed carry permits going forward?
Well, now actually the Supreme Court has laid it out, and strikingly, it's the exact same policy we already have. And it used to be the good cause standard for the state of California, and we made that good cause standard something that was achievable. In the past, it was impossible. So we made it where if you have a legitimate concern for your safety, and by virtue of what you do, who you are, being a victim of violent crime, we gave you that. And so we started raising the number of CCWs, but we have to go through the thorough vetting process. We have to follow rigorously state law. We get audited, and the results speak for themselves. So now, with the Supreme Court decision, now we're in an avalanche of people asking for CCWs. I cannot deny them based on the Supreme Court's decision.
Quickly to you.
We have to follow the law. We have to have a process to make sure that we're doing backgrounds and people have the proper training and they're storing them properly. But let's not fool anybody here. In the last week, there's a story out there that needs to be investigated, that there was a pay-to-play donor where people were giving this sheriff donations and they were being fast-tracked from 8 months to a year down to 2 months, and there were 2 people working out of his office working directly for him who were personal friends of his.
20 seconds to respond to that.
Our public corruption unit doesn't target our critics. They also target anyone who's accused of a crime, and that include those very 2 individuals that you mentioned. So thank you for actually acknowledging the work of our public corruption unit.
All right, we're going to call this quick bites. These are real quick answers. One word, first thing that comes to mind. What is one word to describe the state of the Sheriff's Department?
Disarray.
One word to describe the state of the Sheriff's Department.
Perseverant.
What is one nice thing about your opponent?
He dresses nicely.
What is one nice thing about your opponent?
I appreciate all the years of service that he served with LA County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, and this is called personal issues. This is what we do on our political show, The Issue Is. This is real quick, fun stuff. Maybe we'll find something you agree on. Favorite TV show?
Big Bang Theory.
Favorite TV show?
It's a Big Bang Theory.
Oh! Favorite?
First time out.
Favorite band or musical artist?
Vicente Fernandez.
Mana.
What is your favorite book?
Ooh. I would have to say, and you'll laugh at this one, a small book that probably no one's ever heard about, and it's Frame Reflections by Sean and Ryan. Very influential book.
What about you?
The Bible.
All right. And what is your favorite LA sports team?
Dodgers.
Favorite LA sports team?
Dodgers and Lakers.
There we go. Okay, we found something. Big Bang Theory and the Dodgers. Thank you both for being here tonight. Up next, we're going to have the mayor's debate. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, Chief Robert Luna. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more right after this. job.
That's the one.
All right, cut.
So great. I can't even celebrate. I am so worried we're not going to find our lead for episode 3.
I found her. I'm telling you, she is about to blow up.
I've never heard of her.
Thank you. Came from nowhere.
Do you think she can do the back bend?
Used to be a yoga instructor. I know everyone's a yoga instructor in LA, but the envelope is calling her the front runner for this year's award season.
Bring her in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the tentacles. They're kind of like arms, not legs.
Okay.
Ta-da!
It's your garage.
Mom, it's an ADU,
An AD who?
an additional dwelling unit. I read this article in the LA Times about the housing shortage and ways to get around the red tape.
Did you do this for
It
me?
needs a little bit of work, but
No.
I forgot your housewarming gift. It's an earthquake kit.
Oh, now you want to scare me?
I mean, I'm just saying, the big one's coming.
Let me enjoy this moment. I have a lot of decorating to do. Where should we start? I gotta move my things out here.
I wrote this letter to the LA Times trying to address the excessive amount of pollution that we breathe in daily.
I wrote to the Los Angeles Times because of the culture of the Torrance police.
I wrote to the LA Times because there's other cities who already ban leaf blowers.
I wrote to the Los Angeles Times to point out the problems with illegal abortion.
LA never ceases to impress me.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to avoid traffic.
Or become your truest self. That's an Angeleno right there. By living his truth, he brings the city to life.
That guy?
Yeah, you, me, and that guy. What we do right here, right now, it can change everything.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about how many sound baths you've been doing.
That's fair.
inside the Skirball Cultural Center for debate night in Los Angeles. I'm Alex Michelson alongside Erica D. Smith, Gabriella Tessier, and welcome to you, Mr. Caruso, Congresswoman Bass. Thank you so much for being here. Let's remind everybody of the rules. So we are going to be going back and forth asking questions for each round. You're going to get 1 minute. You're going to get 1 minute. We're going to have a 30-second for rebuttal, 30-second for rebuttal. We'll also have an opportunity for follow-ups during that if you don't answer the questions. There will also be a bell if you go over time, but feel free to go under time, which gives us an opportunity to get even more questions in. Let's start, ladies first, Congresswoman Bass, with sort of the big question that is the most important question in every election, because elections ultimately are really a choice between two people. This is the first time you both have been on stage together. What is the biggest difference between you and your opponent, and why would you be more effective as LA mayor?
Well, you know, I think Los Angeles, it is very clear that we need a new direction with bold, decisive leadership. We have an emergency. 40,000 people on our streets not being addressed to me with the urgency and with the, like it is an emergency, and not a commitment to solve the problem. I am a lifelong pro-choice Democrat who is always on your side. We have to stand up for what we believe in, and I believe that in Los Angeles, we can have a city where homelessness is addressed. We can have a city where people feel safe and actually are safe, and I think we can have a city where people are not priced out of housing, but actually counted in. And so we can do this together. I have worked for many years on these issues. In 1990, started an organization called Community Coalition because the city was facing a crisis then. It was a crisis of crime. It was a crisis of poverty. I brought everyone together and we came up with very specific solutions.
Mr. Caruso, what's the biggest difference between the two of you, and why are you most qualified?
Well, first of all, thank you for agreeing to the debate. It's good to be on the stage with you, and thank you to Fox and Univision, LA Times, and KPCC. I believe our city is in trouble, and I want to help. I think back on my grandparents who immigrated to this country, and they landed in Boyle Heights. That's where our family story started. They came here with no money, and they didn't know the language, but they had something that so many people that come to the United States share, and that's a big dream. LA was always the place where big dreams come true. I think now when I go around the city, and I am loving being a candidate, by the way, because I get to meet so many people. Crime is dampening dreams. It continues to rise. Homelessness, the count continues to rise. People are scared. People are worried. They're also heartbroken. They feel like they haven't been heard around the community. I want to change that. There's a clear choice in this election. You can either have more of the same and the system is broken, or we can have real positive change. And I'd be honored to have the support and the opportunity to do that.
You brought up the issue of being a lifelong pro-choice Democrat.
Yes.
How much does the LA mayor even have to do with abortion rights?
Well, let me just tell you, it's a question of values. It's a question of democratic values. We are a democratic city, and I think that that is one of the differences between the two of us. Los Angeles and California, I would say with pride, is welcoming people from other places to receive reproductive rights. And I think that protecting a woman's right to choose is fundamental. It is a reflection of your values. So whether or not the city of Los Angeles administers health care, it's a question of values. And that's who I am. That's who I've always been.
In the past, you have donated to candidates who were against abortion rights, like George W. Bush, Mitch McConnell. Do you regret that now?
Well, I am pro-choice. I always have been. I'm clear, I'm on the record for decades that I believe the government should not be involved in people's right of how they decide on what to do with their body. But let me just say something here. To use the same standards that are used against me, the question that you asked, Karen has supported a congressman in Georgia, anti-abortion, supported the Hyde Amendment with Obama health care that prevented federal funds to be used, supported Scientology, lays praise on Scientology. You know, if the same standard exists, then we should both be held to the same standard, not because we donated to one person or another.
All right, we'll maybe get into that later, but let's get to the biggest issue that people asked about, which was homelessness. Erica.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so biggest issue to no one's surprise is homelessness. But I wanted to get a sense of what each of your plans are and why it's better than your opponent. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Caruso. What is your plan?
My plan is clearly to call a state of emergency, take the authority in the mayor's office, bring a team of the best and the brightest. I want to be a part of a team of change agents that are actually going to get something done. We have studied what has worked across the country and across the world. Immediately start building shelter beds. 30,000 is part of the plan. 500 caseworkers, 500 sanitation workers to clean up the street. We've got to meet people where they are. What's happened so far by our elected officials is inhumane. We have people living and dying on the street. The population continues to grow. It's sad. Meet them where they are. Do them with dignity. But the premise of my plan is to get them in shelter, keep them safe, and then offer the services that they need. Psychiatric care, drug addiction care, retraining to get out there. Rand did a study. 80% of the people on the street want to get off the street. And when you go down to the care providers that I've walked with, People's Concern, the Downtown Women's Center, the rate of success is enormous. I want to expand that.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
Well, we absolutely have to get people off the street immediately. We have to get them into housing, and we have to address why they were unhoused to begin with. Lately, people have viewed the unhoused as a monolith, people who are strung out on meth and don't want to come inside. There's actually several different categories of people who are unhoused. For example, there's thousands of children that are unhoused. There's children who aged out of the foster care system. You would have to provide housing for them differently. There's veterans. There's people who are suffering from serious illnesses. So we have to get people off the street right away, but shelters are not the answer. And what we have done too long is we have put people in shelters. Now the shelters have become so dangerous that people don't even want to be in the shelters and are choosing to be outside on the street. So we have to have interim housing, but it has to be very limited in time, and we have to move people into permanent supportive housing. On day one, housing, day one, services.
Mr. Caruso, what do you think of that?
Well, I just want to respond. I mean, the Congresswoman's plan is clear. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, she said, I cannot solve this problem in 4 years. The best I can do is provide some light at the end of the tunnel. We have 5 people a day in Skid Row alone dying. The population is growing. People are living in their own waste. And with all due respect, we did a white paper on this. Everything that is working works when you get people off the street. Give them dignity and humanity. Welcome them where they are. God bless you. And then provide the services. That's how it works. If you give the services on the street, I know I'm going a little over time, you just create the circle that we have and the problem continues to get worse.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
My problem with Rick's plan is his Rick plan just calls for shelters. You have to have shelters, but you have to move people into permanent supportive housing, and then you have to mainstream them out of that. Now, there are some people that might have chronic illnesses, and such as mental health, and might have to be in supportive housing maybe for the rest of their lives. But the point is that you have to have a comprehensive approach. The other thing you have to do is prevent people from falling into homelessness. We were able to do that, preventing people from falling into homelessness with a lot of money that we were able to win from the federal government for COVID relief. We'll talk more about that later, I'm sure.
Gabriella, to you.
Yeah, expanding precisely on that topic. You know, Latinos are becoming unhoused disproportionately at an alarming rate. When you see an overall increase of people going out in the streets and living there, it's 4%, according to the latest count. But among Latinos, it's 26%. What are you going to do to address that? And we're going to start with you, Ms. Bass.
You know, I'm really concerned about that, and I'm thinking that one of the reasons for that problem is a holdover from the Trump administration, where a lot of people, especially from mixed status families, might be concerned that they can't take advantage of any public resources, because if they do, then they might never be eligible to become citizenship. So I think that we look at why so many Latinos are falling into homelessness, and again, we have to address that reason. We have to get them off the street. So I would look at immigration to see if that is a contributing factor, and then look at also the fact that there are a lot of Latino families, because housing is so expensive, the city has become so unaffordable that you have multiple families living in one house. And so I think that there's a lot of different forms of homelessness. Some people are inside, some people are outside. We have to bring people inside right away.
Mr. Caruso.
Well, the Latino population, as you said, the numbers I saw are 27%. It overly skews against the Latinos. I think a big part of it is a remnant of COVID. COVID overly impacted the Latino community. I've been spending a lot of time around this city in the Latino communities, which I have loved to do, but they feel unheard. They feel like they're not listened to. They feel like they've been abandoned, yet they're 50% of the population of the city. Crime has overly impacted them. They've lost businesses. So that's what's driving a lot of this. They can't afford to pay the rent. Affordability in the city is terrible. We have to do a better job. So I agree that we have to do some things to find the root causes, but we have to lean in. And my plan doesn't just talk about building shelters. My plan talks about building shelters, having wraparound services, engaging them constantly, and at the same time, building housing. If you go to the Downtown Women's Center, they've got the services that are working. They've waited 6 years to get a building permit to build more apartments. Shame on our elected officials.
We're going to go on that a little bit later on, but I wanted to address this. You said 80% of the people who get who's offered a place to go to and leave the streets will take it. However, Ms. Bass, you say children, immigration.
Right.
Who is asking for immigration papers when they need a shelter?
No, exactly right. The point I was raising is that I think that might be one of the causes for people being afraid to come inside, because they might feel that they're taking use of public services that then would compromise their citizenship. So when you would do outreach in the Latino community amongst Latino homelessness, you would make sure that people, number one, were bilingual, but people also had sensitivity to immigration as a key issue that might be keeping people outside, afraid to go in a shelter, and then find out that that's held against them in the future.
Something doesn't add up, because if you have 80% of people accepting a shelter and then saying because of immigration they wouldn't go, what am I missing here?
I'm just citing the RAND study. So I believe in the research that they did. They may be off 5%, 10%. It's still the majority. Again, we're talking to the care providers down there, like the Downtown Women's Center. We have 13,000 women living on the street every night, trying to go to bed and protect themselves, and they can't. The majority get abused on the streets. What we've allowed to happen is insane. It's inhumane. And I'm sorry, it has grown the population 80% during Karen Bass's term representing the city of Los Angeles. We've got to have a different direction. There's a clear choice in how we move forward here.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso.
We are partnering with Loyola Marymount University on this debate, and we're grateful to have another one of their students. Stefanos Sideris is a senior at LMU. Now it's time for his question.
As my peers and I at LMU think about life after graduation, we worry whether we can afford to live in LA.
Mm-hmm.
What is your plan to excuse me, sorry.
To keep new graduates from leaving to find more affordable housing.
This is not easy, having lights on you, a TV camera, and these three stare at you. So
Yeah.
I feel it.
It is our fault.
I feel your pain.
We understand your
Mr.
question.
Caruso, the question is really about keeping new graduates from leaving. He's concerned about leaving town.
I want to talk to you because I do understand what you're saying, and I do worry about it. I'm a builder. I know how to build. We have overregulated building in the city to the point that it's so expensive to build in the city, people aren't building. That's why affordability is so upside down. People like yourself, you work hard, you go to school, you get a decent job, and you can't afford an apartment or to buy here. We have to strip away the unnecessary regulation. I know how to do that. I deal with it every day. And then we got to start building and incentivize people to build at affordable rates, and have the city lean in with its full faith and credit to guarantee loans, to reduce the cost, so they can pass on those savings to you. The future of the city is you and people like you. And we need to make sure that you're able to buy a place, work here, invest here, build a business, grow the economy of Los Angeles, greatest city in the world. But it can only grow if we allow the youth to invest in this city.
Congresswoman, are there regulations you think that need to be cut right now to make building easier?
Oh, absolutely, there are. But before I get to that, let me just say that the first thing that you need after school is a job. And so we have to make sure that there are decent paying jobs that will allow you to afford a place. And then we have to reduce rents. And the way we deal with affordability is to increase the supply. But yes, I think there are regulations that need to change, but I also think the process needs to change. So one of the things that I would do immediately for anybody that wants to come and build housing specifically for the homeless population or affordable housing, I would say, one, you don't need to go to the front of the line. We need to have a completely separate line for you. We need to centralize the process with all of the various departments so that you don't have to run around to 10 and 15 places. That will allow people to build quicker, and if you can build faster, it's cheaper.
Mr. Caruso, let's dig in on how you cut those regulations. What happens if environmentalists protest that, if the city council says no, if state regulators say no? How do you actually make that happen?
You can have laws, and that's a really good question. We have a law in the state of California that provides if you meet certain goals on sustainability and you check the boxes, you're exempt from the CEQA challenges on it, and we should be doing that for sustainable housing. We should be doing it for low-income housing. We should be doing it for housing for the homeless. We should have a fast track. Years ago when I started building in this city, there was a fast track method to get permits. We don't have that anymore. So there's a whole bunch of ways of doing it. But listen, I want a separate team of people in my office who understand how to build, that's going to cut through all the red tape, and we got to start housing people.
And last word on this topic to you, 30 seconds.
Well, let me just say we absolutely need to do whatever we can to cut regulations. And let me give you an example of something that is really not allowed people to get into housing with vouchers, for example. There's so many requirements. The federal government, one of the things that we did with COVID money is we sent a lot of vouchers to Los Angeles. Los Angeles has over 3,000 vouchers, but has only been able to use about 190. And so we need to waive those regulations that you have to have an ID, for example. Those regulations need to be waived so that we can take advantage of the vouchers that the city has.
All right, we're going to continue on the theme of housing and housing affordability. Frank Stoltz from KPCC has our next question.
And I'm going to use notes.
Smart, Frank.
Yeah, I'm older. I want to ask both of you about the city's eviction moratorium. It's set to expire within a month of one of you taking office and could force thousands of people from their homes. Do you support extending the moratorium? And if not, what other protections would you provide renters if it ends? Provide renters if it ends. Congresswoman Bass, would you answer first?
First of all, we cannot allow more people to become homeless by the moratorium going away. But at the same time, we also need to help the landlords, especially the mom and pop landlords, and that's the majority of the landlords. There's other reasons why homelessness might increase in the near future is because a lot of the resources that we fought for and won for COVID that came to the city of Los Angeles are about to expire. So all of those people that are in hotels and motels from Project Room Key and Project Home Key, those resources are about to expire. We need to get them extended. But the eviction moratorium, we can't just have that go away and then have thousands of people on our street. That would be a disaster.
So you would extend it?
Yes, I would extend it.
And do you?
We would extend it, but the landlords need to be assisted as well.
All right.
We don't need for them to default on their mortgages, and then you have two people without housing.
Would you extend it, Mr. Caruso?
Well, to be very honest, I don't understand what that plan was. There was a lot of nice talk. You have to really drill down into the nuance of what's going on. Somebody can stay in an apartment and not pay rent without showing proof that they need to stay there. We need to change the process. Every landlord that I talk to, including me, I am more than happy to support somebody to stay at a reduced or no rent until they can get back on their feet, as long as you prove that you can do that. There's no system in the Los Angeles housing department to prove it. So the unfairness that landlords are feeling, everybody realizes we have shared responsibility, is to just make sure that there's proof and it's verified. And then we should extend it. If somebody is making money and can afford the rent, they shouldn't be carried, right? So it's a matter of fairness. So I would change the law in dealing with the problem, and we have to understand the problem. It's one of the advantages I have. I understand business. I built a business. so I know how to solve the problems that businesses and human beings are dealing with.
Thank you.
Congresswoman Bass, he says the eviction moratorium as it works now is not fair.
Well,
is impractical.
I don't make the assumption that people who need the eviction moratorium for protection are cheating. There are always people who abuse the system, but I don't believe that that is the general rule. And I also think that renters need to have legal assistance as well to protect them, because there are landlords that want to evict so that they can sell their property, so that they can raise rents, because some of the apartments are rent controlled. And so I don't make the assumption that somebody is there to cheat. I do make the assumption that people are in housing because they need to be housed.
So, Mr. Caruso, are you promising to change the eviction moratorium and then extend it?
I'm promising to make sure it's fair to those that are living there and need the help so they don't end up on the street, and also to support the landlords so that there's fairness to the landlords that made the investment and bought that apartment building or whatever it may be. Yes, and then extend it.
Sounds like
but not extend it the way it is today. It's not fair to anybody. So we can make it right. That's the role of the mayor, is to represent everybody and find common ground and do what's right for everybody. At least that's what's going to drive me.
Sounds like a bit of a policy distinction there. Now let's talk about the issue of public safety. Our last debate was in March. Congresswoman Bass, I'm sure you remember this question. I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10.
I sure do.
With 1 being not safe, 10 being really safe. How safe did you feel? And you said you felt a 10 at the time.
I said
and then your guns were stolen from your house, and you said that your safety had been shattered. So I'm curious what that number would be now that you've been through that, and more importantly, in addition to that, how are you going to make all of us feel more safe?
Well, let me answer that first. My public safety plan calls for getting officers on the street immediately in neighborhoods and areas that want to have an increased police presence. And the best way and the quickest way to do that is to move officers away from administrative duty. Now, we also need to hire officers. We need to bring LAPD up to its authorized budgeted amount, which is about 9,700, which means in any given month, we might need to hire from 200 to 400 officers. At the same time, I believe in stopping crime today, but preventing crime tomorrow, and investing heavily in crime prevention strategies, of which I pioneered a number when I started Community Coalition in 1990. They've been replicated and refined, and so that's how I would keep Los Angeles safe. In terms of myself, I was making reference to my neighborhood where I felt safe because of measures I personally took and also measures that were taken by my neighborhood. Obviously, they failed. So my sense of safety was shattered. If I had to grade it, I would grade it at a 5.
You'd grade it a 5. Last time around, you didn't grade it at all. Somehow you didn't. You got out of that answering that. So I'm not going to be as kind this time. How would you grade your own personal safety, with 1 being not very safe, 10 being very safe? And why is your plan better when it comes to public safety?
Well, and I may not answer that again. So, because what I said last time is, I'm going around this whole city. People don't feel safe. They just don't feel safe. They don't feel safe to go for a walk. People are taking off their jewelry before they go to dinner. Think about all the things that we can't do anymore. You don't feel safe. And let's talk about the real numbers. And we didn't hear much about these guns, which I think the Congresswoman should answer some questions about. What kind of guns were they? How were they stored? Was it in compliance with city law? The city has a very, very detailed law. We are 880 officers down. 880. In 2019, our leadership defunded the police. Our last academy class, it's normally 150. We recruited 23. We're trying to dig our way out of a hole. We've got to change. There is a clear difference between the Congresswoman's plan and mine. My experience being a police commissioner, working with LAPD and the leadership there, I dropped crime 30% with the team there.
Yeah. So why no number?
Because it doesn't matter if you don't feel safe, whether it's a 5 or a 4 or an 8, it goes to your gut and your soul and your heart. You're worried about your kids walking to school. I don't want to put a 5 on my kid and say, well, there's a 50-50 chance you make it. I think, I mean, seriously.
So
I mean, but But Alex, we're dealing with life and death.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the highest homicide rate in 15 years. We're dealing with more people being killed by guns than in recent history. It's not a numerical number that makes somebody feel good.
So he's making some big questions to you about your guns and personal safety, and also making claims about your thing. How do you want about your policy? How do you want to respond to that?
Well, actually, I'm disheartened. I'm disheartened, Rick. So I just want to take a moment and speak directly to the people of Los Angeles. My home was burglarized. I called the police, and later they arrested 2 suspects. And the storage and registration were 100% legal. I think this is an act of desperation, Rick. Calling for me, which a letter went out today by a member of the city council that I was very shocked by, calling for me to be investigated for the theft that happened at my house.
Yeah.
And Rick, the reason why I'm disappointed is because you remember when the Grove was burglarized, I called you to find out how you were. And instead, you call on me to prove one thing or another, and then the councilman calls on me to be investigated?
So that councilman was Joe Buscaino.
Who's right here?
A response from you, and then we'll move on.
What I said about your burglary is that I feel sorry for anybody, including you, for that to happen to. It's a terrible personal sense of evasion.
It was.
And I said that publicly. And I sympathize with you.
After a few days.
No, no. It was actually the day I found out about it. But I would also say this. There are 2 guns on the street now. And we have terrible gun violence in the city of Los Angeles. And that's a shame. And I know that pains you. But knowing how those are stored, it's a simple thing to answer.
And I want to remind both of you that bell means it's time to stop talking as well. I know there's a lot to get into there.
Excuse me. Yes, there is.
We're going to keep moving. Erica, the next question is to you.
Something just as probably contentious. Let's talk about USC. So,
oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. Exciting. So I'm going to ask each of you a different question, and you'll have a chance to respond back in the rebuttal. But I want to start with you, Congresswoman. You received a $100,000 scholarship without having to apply. To be clear,
not true.
Okay. To be clear, prosecutors have said you are not the target of a criminal investigation.
Thank you.
In retrospect, was it bad judgment to do that, given USC the opportunity to curry political favor with you?
No, I don't think it was bad judgment at all. People that know me know that I have spent the last 3 decades working for the most vulnerable children in our country, children in the child welfare system. What people might not know is that I was on the faculty of USC Medical School for 15 years. I was offered that scholarship so that I could be a better legislator to take care of the nation's most vulnerable children. I applied for that scholarship. I studied nights and weekends. I got excellent grades. I did everything that I was supposed to do to better serve the children of the United States. I didn't apply for an MBA so that I could be a venture capitalist. It's a social work degree that was given to me on merit.
Mr. Caruso, Congresswoman Bass has accused you of covering up a sexual misconduct scandal involving former USC gynecologist. How do you respond to that?
I'll respond the way that your newspaper responded, the LA Times. When USC was in a crisis, they called on Rick Caruso. And in that article, and articles over the last couple of days, have said he is widely regarded, your paper, widely regarded as cleaning up USC. Let me respond to the Congresswoman. She did not apply. It was not on merit, as I understand. It's not what the federal prosecutors said. The federal prosecutors have said there was no application. She got a $95,000 scholarship. She failed to report it in Congress on the paperwork where it had to be reported. She got a degree taking less classes than her fellow students took, and then worked with the dean to fashion legislation and push through Congress to have taxpayer dollars go back to that same school, and she is named critical in a federal bribery and corruption case, reported by the LA Times using the words of the prosecutors. That's the way it is. And there's an email.
Thank you.
Congresswoman.
Okay.
Yes, a couple of things. Rick, you know you are totally misrepresenting that. As a member of as the chair of the Board of Trustees, was fully knowledgeable of the scholarship that I had. I would say the victims of the gynecologists who sexually assaulted hundreds of students at USC have asked you to release the report. As chair of the Board of Trustees, he committed to do an investigation, to do a report, and then he decided afterwards that he wasn't going to release it when the victims asked for it to be released.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to a great deflection.
All right.
Let me answer. Instead of answering the question, those are the words of the prosecutor, the federal prosecutor. So are you saying the prosecutors are lying?
No, I'm saying you are.
No, I'm reciting the words of the prosecutors.
Okay.
15 seconds.
So are you saying the prosecutors, federal prosecutors, are lying in their filing in federal court? Because they've named you critical. There's an email that says that the dean is going to give the same deal to Mark Ridley Thomas that they gave to you, and he's been indicted.
We're going to move on to another topic. Gabriella, to you.
Yeah, sure. Why don't I take you all back to the sidewalk?
Okay.
Let's all go, forget the university, let's go back to the sidewalk. And of course, pandemic pushed a lot of people to find new resources, new things to do. As you know, we're very entrepreneurial, and given the situation, many of the Latino community and other people went to the streets for street vending. So the lack of regulation has led to abuses and attacks, especially against Latinos. Both of you said you're in favor of regulations for street vending. However, the question is, where would you support street vendors being allowed to operate? Streets or areas particularly intended for that purpose? And we're going to start with you, Mr. Caruso.
I think both. It's a business. You know, one of the families that Tina and I support through Operation Progress down in South LA, he's a street vendor. He lives in Nickerson Gardens. He was telling me that's the way he supports his family. By the way, he's got 2 kids in Northeastern. How about that? He does it off of street vending and the help of Operation Progress and other people. So you've got to give people a path to business. 90% of the businesses in Los Angeles are small businesses. Street vending is a small business. He's proud of that business. That's great. Let him build that business. Maybe that business goes from street vending into a storefront and starts hiring people and grows his business. But all of it needs to be fairly regulated, and it can be. So I don't think it's one or the other. I'm pro-business. I want to open the doors of City Hall and say, we welcome you. We will help you build your business, big or small. We're no longer going to make it so difficult you're going to move your business out of L.A., because that's what's been happening. More people have left L.A. in the last year than have come in the first time in history.
Thank you.
Ms. Bass.
Well, one of the first things that I would do in my administration would be to have a deputy mayor for business, and that deputy mayor would work with both legacy businesses as well as small businesses. And what I would do with street vendors would be to do outreach to them, and to make sure that they are meeting the regulations, and if they're not, to help them do that, to provide technical assistance, and also to provide them a pathway to a brick and mortar business if that's what they would like to do.
You didn't answer my question, Mr. Caruso. I would like to ask you,
sorry.
because I wanted to know if you would support them to be in front of the Grove.
Yes. I said everyone.
In front of the Grove?
Yes.
On the street.
You know, we've started with small businesses that have been in a kiosk, and those businesses have grown on our property and moved into storefronts. I've actually lived it and worked it. I don't need a deputy mayor for business. I know business. You need a mayor that understands business, that changes the culture and the tone of the city. So absolutely I would.
What about you, Ms. Bass? I would like to know if you would allow them, would rather have them on the streets regulated, or would you move them to a market or another place?
Well, I would do both, but it would be what they wanted. It'll be interesting to see street vendors in front of the Grove, but anyway.
We've had it.
But anyway, I would reach out to the street vendors. I think it's really important to reach out to them. And the other thing is that I would be very concerned about their safety. I've seen some of the attacks on the news, and I think that they're really egregious. So if a street vendor is in front of my office or whatever is fine. But I do think that we should offer them assistance.
Our next question is on the issue of homelessness. We got so many different viewers asking us about homelessness. David Guerrieri is one of them. Frank has our next question.
I'm looking forward to my bacon-wrapped hot dog in front of the Grove.
You know what? Hey, Frank, I'll introduce you to the hot dog vendor that's been on one of our properties.
Your time's up. You're taking, where's the bell?
Okay.
All right. Both of you have vowed to get thousands of unhoused people off the streets by scaling up temporary and other housing. But some, of course, refuse to go and others walk away and return to the streets. What do you do about people on the streets who refuse services and or shelter? Mr. Caruso, I know in the past you have said you want to arrest people who refuse services.
No, I never said I want to arrest people. I said at a certain point in time you can no longer allow encampments. Encampments are unfair to the community where they are, to the residential communities, business communities, parks, beaches. You can't operate a city that way. And we're unfair to the homeless, allowing them to be on the streets and dying on the street. What I said is the minute we have a bed, the minute we have shelter, nice shelters, by the way, I like building nice things. We want to build it with dignity and humanity, reach out to people, build trust, bring them in, give them the services they need. It's happening now, Frank. There's organizations that are doing God's work that's happening. If you look at people's concern, they told me 94% of those they shelter do not fall back to homelessness. I'll go with 94%. That's a hell of a success rate. So why don't we build on what's working? Because I tell you right now, what's been happening is not working. We can't allow what's going on with the elected officials to continue and watch people suffer in the streets.
You did say in the last debate that you would arrest people at a certain point. I think you're saying the same thing now. Congresswoman Bass, you've said that arresting folks would be criminalizing poverty.
Yes, that's right. I did say that, and I do believe that. I do think that when you are dealing with an encampment, when you're dealing with people who are homeless, one of the things that I want to do is massively expand street outreach. So there are street outreach teams now done by some of the organizations that Rick was referring to, and they do an excellent job, but they're never able to reach scale because they don't have the resources. And then the people that I think should be doing the outreach are people who were formerly unhoused. Sometimes there's multidisciplinary teams, but it's a way of providing jobs. So one of the things I would do, the people that are in Project Home Key, Project Room Key in the motels right now, one of the things that I would do to help them get on their feet, move into permanent supportive housing or just mainstream into regular housing is hire them, train them, have them go out and do outreach, especially for those people that are service resistant. Because when I started Community Coalition and we were trying to deal with the problem of crack cocaine and we were trying to get people off crack, we used people who had been formerly addicted.
Thank you.
People in recovery. Sorry.
So the question, I guess, suppose, Mr. Caruso, is maybe respond to that. And do you see a difference in sort of the threshold at which the two of you would go ahead and arrest someone?
Well, there's a massive difference between the two of us because my plan has 30,000 beds the first year. My plan has 500 caseworkers, so we have the right services on the street for their mental health, for the drug addicted, that we're engaging them. But every study will tell you that you will not be successful if the service is only on the street. You have to get them in, welcome them, bring them home, make them feel safe, and then they start having the services. That's what I want to do. So yes, at a certain point in time, you're going to have to move encampments off the streets because our neighborhoods are so heavily impacted, and you'll never be able to get crime under control unless you deal with homelessness. I didn't hear it.
Congresswoman Bass.
Thank you. Sorry.
You want to respond to that?
Yes. As I understand your plan, it calls for 30,000 people off the street and primarily in shelters. It's not real clear how much it costs. I believe close to $1 billion, because I think you were just talking about the cost of the housing, not necessarily the services. My plan would cost about $290 million. I do think that we can do more with existing resources. I gave before the example of vouchers. We need to extend the Project Room Key, Project Home Key. But at the end of the day, you can't criminalize poverty.
Thank you.
You would have them in jail. They'd be there 3 days. They'd be right back out on the street.
Thank you.
Can I respond just to clear something up? I'm sorry, Alex.
A few seconds.
Okay. The cost of providing a service on the street is 3 times the cost of providing a service when somebody is sheltered. We could treat 3 times the amount of people if we have them in shelters. then we keep them on the street. 35,000 versus 10,000.
I don't think you provide services on the street.
You are, real quickly, because I gave him a few extra time.
You provide services when they're housed. So you house them on day one, you provide services on day one.
We're providing
no services on the
street now.
Okay,
It's happening now.
You are watching Debate Night in Los Angeles. This is the first TV debate between Rick Caruso and Karen Bass. Erica D. Smith of the LA Times has our next question.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about political affiliation. So, Mr. Caruso, I'm going to ask you both two separate questions. Mr. Caruso, you became a Democrat shortly before registering to run for mayor. Previously, you were an independent, and before that, a Republican. Why should voters trust that you're truly a Democrat now and share Democratic values?
They should look at my track record of what I've done. I left the Republican Party a long time ago, and I did it for a good reason, because it didn't reflect my values. And I'll give you a good example which doesn't reflect my values. We have Republican governors that are shipping people to different parts of this country, to different cities. They're being used as props. That's wrong. It's disgusting. I don't agree with that. I don't want to be a part of that party. That doesn't reflect my values. I have always supported the hardworking men and women of Los Angeles. I believe in the democratic values. I have always been socially liberal. I've been on the record for that, and that's where my heart lives. I supported Jerry Brown early on and a good friend, Governor Newsom early on and a good friend. The list goes on and on of Democrats that I'm close with. So I'm proud of it. Simple as that.
And you're of Florida and others who are flying migrants to sanctuary
These are
cities
human
in other
beings.
states.
Yes.
Congresswoman, you are a lifelong Democrat, as you mentioned earlier. LA, also, as you mentioned earlier, is a very Democratic city. But, you know, their critics will say you'll just be more of the same and that we have a number of failed Democratic policies. What do you say to those folks?
Well, first of all, Rick, I think when you changed your registration, one of the things that you said is that you liked the Democratic Party of 10 years ago, not the Democratic Party of today. I like the Democratic Party 10 years ago, and I like the Democratic Party of today, because the Democratic Party of today is more diverse politically and diverse in every single way.
Doesn't seem to be accepting me.
Well, but you know, and you know, no, that's not funny. He's correct. No, he is correct, and that's because for 36 years he was a Republican, then he became an independent, then he became a Republican again to support John Kasich, while John Kasich was signing anti-choice legislation. Then he became an independent, and then 3 weeks before filing, he became a Democrat. That's the problem, is that you can't just keep going back and forth like that.
Do you want to respond, Mr. Caruso?
I do. I'm glad you brought up John Kasich. I supported John Kasich because I was trying to stop Donald Trump. If you remember at that time, John Kasich was the only chance of messing up the electoral votes for Trump to get the nomination. So I supported Kasich to use him as a foil to stop Donald Trump. I was on the record for that. And I have been against Donald Trump because you wrongly accused me of being like Trump, which is so unfair. Never supported Trump, never gave him a dime. Never supported him for president. And when you asked me for donations, I supported you and gave you donations. Did you think I was Donald Trump when I was writing you a check? Of course not.
I do want to circle back, Congresswoman, to the question I originally asked, which is why are you not more of the same?
Why am I not more of the same?
Democratic. I mean,
well, you know what? I don't subscribe. I don't accept the notion that the reason why we have problems is because it's Democrats that run the cities. That's a Republican talking point. You know, and Rick, I don't think that you are Donald Trump. I don't. But
Thank you
did accept an appointment.
I want to make sure we see that in the news and
but
advertising. Thank you.
But you did accept an appointment. You know, I mean, as someone who suffered for 4 years under this man, the idea of accepting an appointment from him is very tough.
So then to his point, why did you accept money from him?
Why did I accept money from him? Because you know what? In fundraising, you raise money from a lot of folks. He also gave me money for foster care. So there are actually other Republicans that donate to me, by the way.
Yeah.
Other Republicans who've endorsed me.
Gabriella, the next question is to you.
Well, can I?
You want me to tell you?
What's that?
You want me to tell you who?
Hey, what?
You want me to tell you who endorsed me, Republican? Mike Valines. We were leaders together in Sacramento.
We're going to keep moving.
No?
No comic
Okay.
relief?
Okay, no comment back. Okay, let's move on to this question. The city of LA, as you know, has the most stringent environmental rules for building in the country. Allegedly, builders say that they drive up the cost and drag out construction, making it impossible to deal with. As mayor, would you move to lessen those environmental regulations to make building more affordable housing included, or would those environmental goals be more important to you as mayor? And we're going to start with you, Congresswoman Bass.
Well, the environmental goals are extremely important to me, and I'm honored to have the endorsement of the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters. We have to get building done. Environmental rules are put there for our safety and protection, but sometimes the rules can be so onerous that are not necessarily protecting the environment, but we need to expedite building. And one of the issues that we're dealing with a lot right now is climate change. We have wonderful goals in Los Angeles on climate change. We're all experiencing the heat. We have fires. We need to increase the fire department. That's another issue in terms of public safety, but also the environment, because one of the reasons why we are dealing with the fires is because of climate change. So environmental rules are there for protection, but sometimes the rules can prohibit us from being able to build, and there might need to be flexibility there. I would not eliminate them.
But you would favor, yeah, absolutely. So you would favor environmental rules, or would you favor lowering the cost of building by removing some of those rules?
Well, you know, it just depends. It just depends. I don't think that I could blanketly say. I do think that rules need to be relaxed in a lot of different areas because we have a crisis. The only way the city is going to be affordable is if more housing is built.
Mr. Caruso.
Do I get the start of the clock?
Yeah, 1 minute. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Hey, as I understand your question, these are environmental laws that affect the construction of a building, correct? I have built, with my team, I have an incredible team that have built a lot of great buildings in Los Angeles. The requirements on being regulations to protect the environment, they drive costs, but they're worth the cost. I have never found those to be the problem that's driving costs. And in fact, we've exceeded that. Every project we built, I believe, including the last one of the Palisades, has a gold LEED certification, which means it's of the best in terms of environmental rules. I think we should do more on the environmental rules on how we build projects to make sure they're safe for the environment. What's driving the cost is overregulation. What's driving the cost is you can have 10 different committees have to approve a project in the city of Los Angeles. And do you know that our planning codes in the city of Los Angeles, 74% are over 20 years old?
Thank you.
They don't even relate to the city. That's what drives the cost.
Ms. Bass, do you have anything to say about that? Those rules that actually prohibit affordable housing to be built constantly, including those environmental rules?
Well, I would agree, and that's why I said that if you're going to build affordable housing or housing to house the homeless, you should have your whole separate line. It should be expedited, and all of the departments that you would interact with should be centralized so that you don't have to run around to 10 or 20 places. And so there are rules and regulations that do need to be relaxed. Everybody says that. I talk to developers who tell me that they can go to Downey and get something built in no time. But when it comes to building in Los Angeles, it's extremely onerous.
Last word to you, Mr. Caruso.
Well, listen, I agree, but I would also say that I understand how this works. I've been on the inside of LA city government. I worked for 3 mayors. I started with Tom Bradley and then Dick Reardon and then Jim Hahn. I also understand how government fails. And this is an area where government's failing because, quite frankly, I think the culture has been with our leadership that we're not there to serve the people. And if you're there to serve the people, you'll figure out how to move projects along and get them built. Right, and celebrate this incredible city that we have and allow it to grow. That would be my culture change.
Our next question is about the issue of corruption. As we know, there have been several members of the LA City Council in recent years who have ended up behind bars. We have a question from one of our students from Loyola Marymount University, a sophomore named Chloe Barsonis. Chloe.
In a recent LMU survey, only half of residents and those aged 18 to 29 felt that they could trust city government to do what is right. How will you go about instilling confidence in Angelenos so that they can trust your administration?
Mr. Caruso, you go first.
It's a great question. The system is broken, and that's why we have the problems we have today. And the system, quite frankly, is corrupt. And with all due respect to my opponent, she's part of that system. It's just not working. That's why we have Metro that's filthy. Elevators don't work. Escalators don't work. We have crime rising. We have homelessness. The new count just up another 4% in the city of Los Angeles. I'm outside the system. I've served the city of LA under 3 mayors, like I said, since I was 26 years old, for 40 years. Not one ethical violation. How about that? That's what I'm going to bring to City Hall. Zero tolerance. I have a corruption plan. My opponent does not have a corruption plan. I'm going to have a czar that's powered to make sure there is no corruption. Should be zero tolerance. I dealt with it at USC. I changed the culture. I changed the leadership. I worked with my board. We all brought in new leaders, and we changed it. We have to do that in City Hall, or we'll never clean it up. The city.
Congresswoman, to you, and that's quite something what he's saying, that you're part of basically a culture of corruption.
Oh, we'll talk about his involvement in that in a minute, but let me just say that he stole my plan. We will have ethics czar. As a matter of fact, Norm Eisen, who was Obama's ethics czar, has agreed that if I have the privilege of being the mayor of Los Angeles, that he will come. Obama administration had no investigations for 8 years. Norm Eisen said that he would come to Los Angeles. He would do a top-to-bottom review of all city policies. I will ask any nominee of mine to sign an ethics pledge, and we will make sure that we have a very clean administration. But having said that, though, I think it's really important and incumbent on anybody that's in elected office. You have to do the outreach and communicate constantly with people so that they understand exactly what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. So transparency and civic involvement is going to be key to my administration.
She says you stole her plan. What do you say?
How did I steal something that isn't out there? I don't know. I've never seen the plan. My plan's out there. It's been out there for a long time. But listen, leadership, it starts with setting the tone. A good friend of mine has always said, more is caught than taught. A leader has to set an example. I'm going to do things right. I'm going to make sure that my example sets the tone. We will not allow corruption. We're not going to have lobbyists. I'm not taking money from lobbyists. I'm not taking money from special interests. I don't have a PAC in Washington giving me money, right? All of those things lead to corruption because you owe people back things.
Thank you.
Well, he doesn't need to take money from PACs because he's already spent $53 million on this race so far. $40 million in the primary, and actually, no, it's 60, and $20 million in the last couple of weeks to my 4. So I think that that's a different way of going about democracy and is an example of a structural problem within our democracy.
But does that potentially give him more independence?
No, I don't think it does at all. And I think that in all of his years of being a developer, and if you look at the corruption in City Hall, it's always been around developers.
Yeah. Name one time I've been named.
And he's never built a single unit of affordable housing.
Karen, name one time that I have been named in any scandal at all in my career, in my life. Thank you.
Okay, so well, now let's have a little bit of fun, I guess, as we go towards the end. These are quick bites. First thing that comes to mind. What is one word to describe the state of Los Angeles right now?
In a crisis.
One word to describe the state of Los Angeles right now.
Yeah, I would go with crisis. I think it's beyond crisis. I just can't think of the word beyond crisis. We're at an inflection point.
Can you see a role for your opponent in your administration if you win?
Well, let's get to the point of winning, and then, we'll figure that out.
Can you see a role for your opponent?
I'm not looking for a job from you. Yes.
We just had the sheriff's debate. Who do you like for sheriff?
Luna.
Who do you like for sheriff?
I'm not getting in the middle of that. I'm trying to become the mayor of Los Angeles. I'll tell you this, though. I'll work with either one of them because that's the job of the mayor.
All right, now to our personal issues, the fun questions. Favorite place to take a visitor in L.A.?
The beach.
Favorite place to take a visitor in L.A.?
go with Karen to the beach. I like the beach.
He's going to come with me to the beach.
I like the beach. I said to go to Karen with the beach. I like the beach.
I want to see what that looks like.
We'd have a great time on the beach. We could bring our podiums.
And lastly, I'll ask the question: are the Dodgers going to win the World Series?
Heck yes.
Are the Dodgers going to win the World Series? So we found something we agree on.
There you
We're all going to the beach after
That's
this.
right.
Congresswoman, Mr. Caruso, thank you both so much. Thank you to our great audience. Thank you to all of our partners. We really appreciate it. We show we can have a discussion in Los Angeles. And everybody, go out and vote. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.